Hello, friends. In the lab time, me, Drew Dougherty, John Harris, and you. Not y'all, but you. It's the three of us. We're enjoying this, and we appreciate you watching, appreciate you listening. But, John, first things first, it's good to be with you. How are you, my friend? What's new?
Doing okay. Man, I'll tell you this. It's so funny because in the last probably 2, 3 days, I've had, hey, can I get a lunch with you? Can I get a meeting with you before camp starts? I'm like, man, this Hall of Fame game has just put a crimp in my style for meetings, which is good and bad. I mean, I can't I can't get anything done. I'm like, well, okay, if you want to do it after the fourth, I go to Big 12 Media Days for 3, 4 days. Then the next week, I go to SEC Media Days for a couple days, and then we have camp starting on that Thursday. So I'll let you figure it out. So
Busy,
it's
yeah.
been tough trying to get anything done, which is kind of good. So it's kind of the calm before the storm. So I'm good with that. How you doing?
I'm good. You just brought up Pro Football Hall of Fame and the Hall of Fame game, and I'm going to be a jerk. I'm going to tease something. I
You're
can't
gonna be a
let this out
jerk.
to the public, but Andre Johnson, obviously he's going to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, gets inducted
That's correct.
August 3rd. We got something cooking with him, and we got something fun that I think a lot of people are going to like. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
Just leave
But
it there.
yeah, there's a little something extra you're going to see this fall with Andre Johnson. But John, on social media, that's right. Shh. On social media, on Twitter recently, the Houston Texans team account had what I thought was a really good tweet. And it just was underrated in quotes. Which
Yeah.
former Texans player comes to mind?
Mm.
And I had one name that came to mind immediately, and I was curious. Well, who did other people think? Mark put a response. It was a good one. And it's funny seeing some of the stuff that's popping up. Like, how many people remember the Ninja Assassin? That's a good one. Antonio Smith. Until Jonathan Joseph came along, that's the greatest free agent signing in team history. Antonio
Yeah.
Smith.
And I reacted to that because Ninja will join our buddy Andy Kalu on Texas All Access on Friday. That is the plan. Those two sat
Awesome.
down for a long form interview. And so Ninja will be on Texas All Access on Friday with Andy. It's going to be awesome. Full
Was
show. It's
it
great. It's like an hour and a half interview.
was he in studio or was he on Zoom?
No, he was on Zoom. He was on
Yeah.
Zoom. But yeah, we got a couple of them. In fact, I don't know when you're listening to this, but Tuesday night, we will have, or we did have, depending on when you heard this.
Yeah.
I'm on Green. I'm on Green came in studio to chop it
Huh.
up with ND. So we'll have that for you on Tuesday. So Ninja, Antonio Smith on Friday. I'm on Green on Tuesday.
That's awesome. I want to stick with Antonio Smith there for a sec because he was really good for these Texans. He came in
Very good.
2009, coming off a Super Bowl run with the Cardinals the year before, and we got to do a radio show with him for a season in 2013, and he was
Yeah.
so much fun. But he was a Pro Bowler in 2011. People forget that he made the Pro Bowl. There were three Pro Bowlers on that first Houston Texans playoff team. It was him. It was Jonathan Joseph,
Yeah.
and now I'm forgetting. I can't remember who the third. It was Chris Myers. Yeah, Chris Myers, the center. So those three were your Pro Bowlers from a team that had Andre Johnson and Arian Foster, but those guys were kind of tag teaming in and out all season long
Yeah.
with
Right.
hamstring injuries and stuff like that. But those were your three. And Antonio Smith was a big reason for a lot of the successes, kind of turning the corner. First year he gets there, Texans are a winning team for the first time. They went 9-7. And then he was here through the 13 season, came back for a stint a couple years later, and it was fun seeing that and hearing that and seeing the reaction from some of the younger guys and all that. And then it was really cool about a month or two ago at the JJ Watt Charity Softball Classic, that game, he was out there. It was good seeing him in the dugout, and it was good talking with Antonio. He is a fun person. He was a fun player to watch, fiery, very good, and definitely I think that's a great call. He is underrated. He was underrated as a player here for the Texans.
Yeah. It's the hard part to me is like, how do you assess the word underrated?
That's the
Is
beauty
it
of it.
somebody? Yeah, exactly. Because everybody's got their version of underrated. So, like for you and me, we've seen all these guys up close, for you since 2009, for me, 2014. But even before that, we were covering the team. So we saw these guys and we know these guys intimately. So some guys we feel like, oh, this guy maybe didn't get enough credit. I don't know. We're going to look at it a little bit differently maybe than some fans will, because the fans are like, well, national media didn't talk about this guy.
Yeah.
And so Arian Foster should be underrated. It's like, I don't know if that fits, but look, it's everybody's personal definition. I think Ninja falls into that category for a number of reasons. I think maybe the first one is the fact that he lived up to a large free agent contract. And I know that sounds
Yes.
bizarre in some respects, but that was not something. First of all, it's not something that's done a lot in the NFL.
Right.
Secondly, it's not done
Historically or currently. Historically or
right.
currently. Yeah.
And B or two, it hadn't been done here in Houston. And for Ninja, I go back 2009, very first practice in pads. And so it's one-on-ones. It's D-line, O-line, one-on-ones. And this was before the collective bargaining agreement. So you could bang first day. And they're banging. But Mario Williams, Antonio Smith, I'm trying to remember who else was part of that mix in 2009. They're all jumping offside. I mean, hot when they're jumping offside. And D-line coach at that time was Bill Kolar. And, Bill was feisty. So after about the third time or fourth time of those guys collectively jumping offside, Kolar could be heard everywhere, but I could hear Kolar say something. I couldn't make out what he said, but he said it a little bit more reserved because there were like 10 rows of fans. And I'm sitting there next to our buddy Lance Zierlein, and we're just kind of sitting there, kind of arms crossed, just front row watching this. And Kolar says something as Ninja jumps offside. And all of a sudden, Antonio goes to an anger level I've never seen. You want me to bring the dogs? And he's just going off, and like they're having to hold him back. Like he's losing it. And I just remember it just goes, oh no. And because that was our thought, like, oh my gosh, you paid all this money for this guy, and now he's blowing up on the first day. And the thing is he was worth every flipping penny.
Yeah.
He was worth every penny on and off the field. He was so valuable for this team. I think Ninja goes in there. I'll give you mine real fast.
Oh, hold on though. Let me add a corollary to that. That's a great story. I love hearing that story. You talked about Bill Kolar. Bill Kolar was a really good player in his own right. Excellent assistant coach for a long time. And you mentioned him and Antonio Smith being at odds that day. That all got mended up. Those guys, I think, are friends now. I know Kolar and a lot of former Texans defensive linemen, they still get together on about a yearly basis and get together. But I will always remember. I'll never be able to forget the "stay up." Bill Kolar always yelling, "Stay up!" Don't fall down on the field, because bad stuff happens in practice when you're on the ground if you're a football player. Yes. And then that's the idea. Like him yelling, that's the idea when you get something right. But you could hear him above everything else at practice fields over at the Houston Methodist Training Center. Good call. I like that.
As it pertains to that, if we're talking about underrated,
yes,
maybe Bill Kolar doesn't get his due as a defensive line coach and how good he actually was.
Sure.
The guys that he got a chance to coach. So maybe he falls in this category of underrated.
Think about that. He survived and was here for 3 different coordinators. Yep. He was a Frank Bush defensive line coach. Wade Phillips kept him on. And then Gary Kubiak, the transition to Bill O'Brien, and then Romeo Crennel being the defense coordinator under Bill O'Brien. Kolar was here for a year with Crennel. So, and that's a 4-3 to 2 different type of 3-4s. Yes, Wade and Romeo ran 3-4s, but they're different. So I think it's a measure of how great he is and was as a coach that he stuck through those. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay. So mine that I had tweeted or posted is a guy that wasn't here for a number of years, but I start thinking about there's a position for the Texans that historically has not been fantastic. It's been okay at times.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, when you think about, man, ultimately he might be one of the 3 best at this particular position. And I kind of in my head started doing the math, and I'm like, well, I think I know one that I would put in there. I might put a second one, but I didn't get a chance really to see him. And he's got to be a good buddy of mine, but I didn't really get a chance to see him play. So I went with Quinton Demps at safety.
It's a good one.
Now, if people are like, wow, what Quinton, like underrated, yeah, he was underrated. Nobody talked about him. He was absolutely fantastic. When he came back in 2015, after being here for a few years, left, came back in 15, he walks in the third week of camp. And by the end of that season, he was starting at safety and playing very, very well. And his 2016 year at safety is one of the best safety seasons in the history of the Texans. In that 2016 season, in 13 games started, he had 6 picks. He had 2 fumble recoveries. He had 1 that went for a touchdown. He had 9 passes defensed in that particular year. I'm sorry, the fumble recoveries were the year before. That was in 2015. My bad. He ended up with 55 tackles, TFL, quarterback hit, but it was those 6 picks that he had with 9 passes defense, which is just, you threw the ball in his area. Now, he had a great pass rush. Witt and Clowney were incredible. But when it came to safeties, he just really didn't get his due, I thought. And when I talk about the top safeties in this organization's history, obviously D-Man comes to mind, Daniel Manning. And Marcus Coleman comes to mind. And I got a chance to see Daniel Manning play. I knew of Marcus, and I'd watched him a little bit with the Jets. I really didn't get a chance to see Marcus play with the Texans. Now, he played some at corner and some at safety. That's the other part. But Quinton Demps was instrumental in that 2016 defense that was number 1 in the NFL. QD was absolutely fantastic. And so I kind of wanted to go off the beaten path a little bit with mine because I kind of figured that's what people expected, So I did. So I went with Quinton Demps. Plus, I played safety. It's my favorite position. So I always want to see the safeties do well. And I always loved QD. I just felt like he was feisty in all the right ways, but he was competitive and he was a really good leader for this team. And like I said, I don't know how many more safeties you can put above him as greatest in Texans history.
Yeah, maybe Glover Quinn.
Glover, yeah.
He's somebody that I would put on this. I would put on this underrated list because look what he did while he was here. Started as corner for the first 2 years. He started out as a corner and started in 2010 at corner opposite Kareem Jackson, and things did not go well there. But then Wade Phillips and company had the bright idea to move Glover to safety, and he flourished there in 11 and in 12. And the Texans it's a mistake in franchise history letting him walk and go to Detroit, and you brought in Ed Reed instead. Glover went on to, goodness, he's got more career interceptions. I think he's got high 20s, which I think
he's got he had 19 in Detroit. He had 5 in Houston. He got 3 of those his second year when he started in that god-awful 2010 defense, which was bad. And then Wade comes in, and it was just like everything got turned. It's like one of those kind of, those medicine bottles where you got to push down and turn.
Yep.
Well, that's what happened. Wade came in and pushed down, and by pushing down, he pushed guys into different positions, drafted J.J. Watt. And by pushing down and then turning, it made it that much easier. And that defense became one of the best in the league, if not the best in the league. So, GQ was a big part of that.
It really was. Like, you can't say, oh, this changed it in particular. It was a combination of Wade Phillips masterminding a lot of things, Glover Quinn switching positions, J.J. Watt coming in and doing some nice things as a rookie, but it wasn't just J.J. He wasn't J.J. Watt, as a rookie. Connor Barwin got healthy because the year before, basically first quarter of the first game, his lower leg exploded, so he was back and he was healthy and he was very productive that year. Just a lot. Brian Cushing had a fully healthy year. People forget he was the team MVP in 2011.
He was so good that year, man.
He was excellent that year. Jonathan Joseph comes in. Daniel Manning stabilizes things at the back. A lot went into that as far as that team getting better. Okay, I want to peel off a few names that have come up on the tweet, and then I'll get to mine at the very end. But there's some obscure stuff. There's some pretty obvious ones, but here's a good one from our guy. Let's see, VT. So it's Brown Chubby Bear. He said, this might be random, but I never understood why they got rid of Chad Hansen. Chad Hansen had a 100-yard game and did some nice things in the COVID year. That's that's a pretty good choice because COVID year, not many people were paying attention to the Texans after about middle of October. It was a tough Texans team. Didn't do too well. Will Fuller, when healthy with Watson, our buddy Landry Locker put that one up. That's a good one.
Yep. I agree with that totally.
That's a really good one. Big Ron 281. Here's a solid Chris Myers and Wade Smith, two of the most consistently solid Texans. That's an excellent one. I'd throw in Mike Brizell. That's another good one there.
Yep, Biscuit. Yeah, for sure. Those linemen probably, I think because it was such a good group collectively, Drew, that maybe we didn't appreciate them individually, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. T-Mill, real deal. I like this one a lot. Tyler Milner. Owen Daniels. Owen Daniels is absolutely underrated. Pro Bowler and the greatest tight end in franchise history. He was an excellent Texan. Man, that's a great choice. I like OD. That's a good one. But you know the one I'm going to go with, John? It's pretty obvious to me that he was a Pro Football Hall of Famer. I know it was obvious to you that he was a Pro Football Hall of Famer, but if it took him 3 years to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I think Andre Johnson was underrated. He did it in anonymity a lot of his career. Think about it. 03, 04, 05, 06. He was doing it with David Carr throwing in the ball, and he's pumping out great numbers. Schaub, Rosenfels, they take turns in 07 and 08. Things get better. He starts to take off, or things start to take off in 09, 10 with Schaub. He has the hamstring year in 11. He has a monster 2012. Monster 2012. Good in 13. Good in 14. Yeah, so I'm going to go with Andre Johnson just because if it took him that long if you watch this guy play, there was no doubt he was a Hall of Famer, but he didn't sail on in his first year of eligibility. By definition, to me, you're underrated. People don't realize your rating. He should have gotten in sooner, I think. And I know there was a lot of other worthy players. I'm not saying that the guys that got in ahead of him are undeserving of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Not saying that at all. They are Pro Football Hall of Famers, deservedly so. But that guy, Andre, in my mind, he should have been in first ballot, no doubt.
I'm going to give you one that he's still playing in the league now and not playing with the Texans. So I wasn't totally sure I wanted to do it, but I remember the day that he was drafted. And I even remember more being at the Senior Bowl because that was my second season at the Senior Bowl. I think it was right. Yes, second or third, either way. I'm over at Fairhope High School and I'm watching, and basically what they did is they lined up O-line against D-line. And it was just, I used to call it, it's funny, when I was coaching high school, I used to call it street fight. It actually would go on the practice schedule, a street fight. And it was essentially just one-on-one, offensive lineman drive, defensive line, just try and defeat it. And there was a defensive lineman, and either his agent or his publicist or somebody was standing behind me. And every time he would go, this guy would just start screaming out like right behind me and telling everybody how great he was. And I just remember him dominating the entire Senior Bowl. And I remember thinking, man, why at Clemson did this just not happen as much as I thought it would? I went back and watched a couple of Clemson games. It was good, but it was not like the Senior Bowl. And then I started reading the story of DJ Reader.
Grave days. I love that.
And his dad had passed away and he was dealing with that. And when we got to know DJ, it all made sense. All of it made sense. But I just kind of fell in love with the story. I fell in love with the guy. He came here, and I'm telling you right now, when DJ Reader would go against Quinton Nelson, it was worth the price of admission. I would watch those two live. I would then go back and watch them on film. And it was Ali Frazier. It was two heavyweights landing blows on one another, just one after the other. And Nelson at that point, that was his superpower years. I mean, he was dominating. I mean, he's still dominating, but he was dominating early in his career. And DJ was the one guy that seemingly held up to him because of his strength, his leverage, all of that. I loved DJ Reader. It killed me when he left his team. I was destroyed. I loved that guy. I did not want to see him go. And I remember being told some nonsense about, he was, subject to injury in the future years and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, he got hurt the very next year, but in 2021, he was a huge piece of taking the Bengals to Super Bowl. Now we got to face him again with the Lions. And here's the one last thing about DJ. He never forgot. He was warming up, or they were in a warm-up lines, stretching lines last year, and I was kind of hanging around. And he happened to see me, and he put his helmet down, and he came over and just gave me a big old bear hug. And I was like, oh, I had to catch my breath because he was kind of amped up for that game. But I just feel like our run defense has never
been the
same
since he left. Yeah, hadn't been the
never
same.
been the same. And when he was in there his rookie year with Will Fork, you couldn't sneeze 3 inches against those guys. Those guys ate everything up. So I'm going to go underrated because I don't think DJ's made a Pro Bowl, and I think that is an absolute crime. And now he's with the Lions, so we'll see him at Energy Stadium. I think it's the first time back at Energy Stadium for him as a player. He's never made a Pro Bowl because, he's never really had the numbers, sacks, 1, 2, 2.5, all that kind of stuff, TFLs. He's got a few here and there, but he did all the dirty work, and he always did it with a smile on his face. And he was just one of the most stand-up individuals you'd ever want to meet. I love that dude, man. I wish him the best in Detroit, except for 1 week this year. And I'll root for Detroit solely because of him. So I'm going underrated DJ Reader.
I like that. I'm glad you got to hug him at the game because I was lucky enough to also. You don't always get that chance, because you become friends with players
right
that wind up leaving. And I was sort of in the same situation. I was down at the end of the field watching them as they're stretched, and he was sort of on the corner. And I'm in the as close as you can get, but I was like, well, he's not gonna be able to come over. He's too busy. And then Brad Wilson, our paramedic, longtime paramedic. You see him on the Astros bench. You see him on the Texans sideline. Great at what he does. He's closer to the field. He's on the field. He just walks right over about 2 yards from him and waves. And DJ gets up and gives him a hug. And as he's doing so, I'm in DJ's sideline, and I just kind of said, "What's up?" And he came over and gave me the bro hug too. But it was good. We had a lot of fun doing radio shows with him at Fuddruckers over the years and doing fun interviews with him. And he's
totally underrated, man. Totally and completely underrated.
With a capital U. Yep. All right, man. Well, it's you're underrated, dude. You're
come on.
So I'll put that out there. But we had fun doing this one. We'll be back at it again in a week. And like I said, man, the guy that I chose is underrated, Andre Johnson. We got something cooking with him. Trust me, you're going to like what you'll see. You in particular. I believe you will like it. John, have a good one, bro.
Yeah, man.